I have compiled hundreds of incident reports in my 31 years with the Office of Historical Record. I have read transcripts from the Siege of Callisto, the burning of New Kandahar Station, the I.O. Accords breakdown. I have sat with veterans who could not finish their sentences. I have reviewed footage that made hardened intelligence officers leave the room. Nothing I have encountered in 3 decades prepared me for what I found in the Varanthos Summit files. Most of the records you are about to read were sealed on the day of the incident. The Galactic Council filed a formal protest demanding the footage be destroyed. Several member species threatened to withdraw from trade negotiations. 2 council representatives submitted what translated, roughly, as letters of personal shame. Earth said no. Earth kept everything. What follows is the complete archival reconstruction of the events of September 3rd through September 9th, 2381. Eyewitness testimonies, communication intercepts, medical reports, security footage transcripts, and the personal journal of Ambassador Elias Kor himself, submitted voluntarily upon his return to Earth, every entry unredacted. I want to be honest with you before you begin reading. When I first received this assignment, I expected a story about politics, about negotiation, about the kind of careful, grinding diplomatic machinery that most people never see and never care to see. That is not what this is. This is a story about what happens when the universe forgets what human beings actually are, what we come from, what we carry inside us, quiet and patient, behind the pressed suits and the careful words and the practiced smiles. This is a story about Elias Kor. I hope it stays with you. The stars out my porthole look the same as they always do. That's the thing nobody tells you about deep space travel. It gets ordinary. You'd think it wouldn't. You'd think the first time you watch a nebula drift past your window you'd feel something profound every single time after that. But after 12 years of this job, a nebula is just traffic. I've been an ambassador for the Terran Diplomatic Corps for going on 12 years now. Before that, I spent 8 years in the TDF, Terran Defense Force, Ground Division, 3rd Rapid Response. Before that, I was nobody in particular. A kid from a small mining settlement on Ceres who read too many books and had strong opinions about fairness. My name is Elias Kor. I am 53 years old. I am 187 centimeters tall. I weigh 89 kilograms. I have gray at my temples that I keep meaning to do something about and then never do. I wear bespoke suits, not out of vanity, but because the Galactic Council responds to visual authority, and I learned a long time ago that if you walk into a room looking like you belong there, half your battle is already won. My aide, Petra Sundaram, tells me I look intimidating without trying. I think she's being kind. I think I just have one of those faces that doesn't do much moving. This mission, Varanthos Summit, Session 7, is about grain rights. Specifically, the right of Terran agricultural ships to operate in the Varanthos Corridor, a stretch of space that connects our outer colony worlds to 14 Earth-adjacent systems. The Velthari Dominion, one of the 6 major species in the Galactic Council, has been blocking transit through that corridor for 11 months. Something about spiritual significance. Something about ancient territorial claims. People on Ceres colony are running food shortages. Children on Kepler 7 haven't had fresh protein supplements in 3 months. That is what this negotiation is about, not abstract politics, children going hungry. I keep that in mind when I dress in the morning, when I put on the suit and the pressed shirt and the diplomatic pin on my lapel. I keep those kids in mind when I walk into rooms full of creatures who can barely tolerate looking at me, and I smile, and I speak carefully, and I do not, under any circumstances, let them see what I actually am underneath the professional surface. It is a performance, in a way, but the most honest performance I've ever given. My security detail is 3 people. Lieutenant Commander Disa Akafer, who handles threat assessment, Sergeant First Class Tomasz Vrana, who handles close protection, and a young corporal named Maris Falwell who is on her first off-world assignment and is trying very hard not to look impressed by everything. They are armed with standard diplomatic security sidearms. Under the terms of the summit agreement, nothing heavier is permitted. That is fine. I've gone into worse places with less. We dock at Varanthos Station in 6 days. I plan to spend 3 of those days reading every piece of intelligence briefing I have on the current council composition. The other 3 I will spend sleeping, because I have a feeling sleep will be hard to come by once we arrive. The stars out my porthole look the same as they always do. I hope that's a good sign. Eyewitness account 1. I've worked with 3 ambassadors in my career. The first one was a brilliant woman who couldn't stop talking. The second was a careful, methodical man who took 7 hours to make any decision. Elia's core is neither of those things. The first thing you notice about him is the quiet. Not awkward quiet, not the silence of someone who doesn't know what to say. It's the quiet of someone who's already thought about everything that could possibly happen and is simply waiting for the moment to arrive. I've seen him walk into negotiations with species that openly considered humanity a pest species. The Velthari literally called us ambient noise in one session, and he would sit down, fold his hands on the table, and begin talking in that level, unhurried voice as if the insult hadn't registered. It always registered. I knew it registered because I'd been watching him long enough to see the tiny thing his jaw did, just once, just barely, and then it was gone. He never wasted the anger. He folded it up and put it somewhere useful. Before the Varanthos summit, I asked him once. We were having coffee in the corridor of the Meridian, both of us too wired to sleep. I asked him if he ever got tired of being diplomatic. He thought about it. That was the thing about Elias. He actually thought about answers. He didn't just have a prepared set of responses he rotated through. He said, "I'm not really being diplomatic, Petra. I'm being strategic. There's a difference." I asked him what the difference was. He said, "Diplomatic means I'm trying to make them comfortable. Strategic means I'm deciding which version of myself they should be allowed to see." I remember thinking that was a strange thing for a diplomat to say. I understand it a lot better now. Intelligence Briefing Summary. Ambassador Corps. The following represents our assessment of the current political environment at Varanthos Station ahead of Session 7. The Galactic Council, current composition. The Council currently seats 6 species. You have existing relationships with representatives from 3 of them. The Suvari Collective, neutral favorable toward Terran interests. The Mendelian Republic, formerly allied, and the Horath Confederacy, historically adversarial but pragmatic. The Velthari Dominion remains the primary opposing party. Their lead negotiator is Archondelegate Vaseth, a female of the Velthari diplomat caste who has served in this role for approximately 60 years and is known for her rigid adherence to Velthari hierarchy protocols. She will be accompanied by a delegation of 11, including 4 members of the Velthari Accord Guard, their equivalent of diplomatic security, though with considerably broader operational authority than our own. New factor, Cathara Syndicate. This is the concern we want to flag most urgently. In the 3 months since Session 6, a 7th party has formally requested and received provisional observer status at the Council. The Cathara Syndicate, a mercantile military alliance from the outer Spiral Cluster. They are new to multi-species politics and, frankly, do not operate by recognized diplomatic norms. Our intelligence suggests the Cathara view human beings with open contempt. We fall below their minimum threshold for what they consider a significant species. In their internal communications, they refer to humans as fragile warm things and have expressed skepticism that we should be seated at a council table at all. They are not a direct party to the Varanthos corridor negotiation. However, Their presence as observers means they will be in the room. We recommend Ambassador Corps be prepared for potential provocation from the Cathara delegation. They have a documented history of testing unfamiliar species through controlled aggression. Essentially, they poke at new parties to see how they respond, then categorize them accordingly. Security note: Varanthos Station is a neutral site governed by Council protocols. All parties are limited to 6 personal security personnel, sidearm class only. Station security is handled by Varanthos operators, a semi-autonomous contracted force loyal to the station itself, not any council member. They are professional and generally reliable, though their response protocols prioritize station integrity over individual protection. Please ensure your detail is fully briefed on exit routes. Rooms 7C through 7F should be noted as secondary positions. Good luck, Ambassador. From the Personal Journal of Ambassador Elias Corps. Entry 4, September 2, 2381. Location: aboard TDS Meridian, final approach to Varanthos Station. Read the intelligence brief 3 times. Made notes in the margins, stayed awake too late. The Cathara, that's the wild variable. I've dealt with species contempt before. The Horath once opened a negotiation by presenting me with a symbolic gesture that, in their culture, means we acknowledge your presence but do not consider you relevant. I smiled and presented them with a handshake, which in human culture means something much warmer. We both knew what we were doing. It was actually a fairly productive opener once we got past the theater. The Cathara feel different based on what I've read. The Horath were contemptuous but rational. They wanted things from us. The Cathara apparently view us the way some people view insects, not with hostility exactly, just with a complete absence of regard. And that combination, contempt plus lack of regard, is where accidents happen. That's where beings stop calculating consequences. I spent an hour this evening doing something Petra doesn't know about and Dissa would probably disapprove of. I went through my service record. Not the diplomatic record, the TDF record. The years before the suits. I look at that record sometimes, not out of nostalgia, just to remind myself what's still in there underneath the professional surface. What's still in me after everything the diplomatic life has layered on top. The official record is 14 pages long. Most of it is standard. But there's a section near the middle, operations classified until 2370, now partially visible, and some of those entries are things I haven't thought about in a while. The body remembers things the mind tries to file away. That's what they told us in the TDF. The body doesn't forget its training. It doesn't forget what it learned to do. I closed the file, put the tablet away, made sure my suit jacket was pressed for the morning. Tomorrow we dock. I wonder what these Cathara actually look like in person. I wonder if they know anything about where we came from, about what our planet was before we managed to build enough rockets to leave it. Probably not. Most species don't bother to learn. That's usually their first mistake. Timestamp: September 3, 2381, 600 hours station time. Entry type: arrival record. Terran vessel TDS Meridian docked at Bay 7 at 5:47 hours. Standard processing completed without incident. Arrival party: Ambassador Elias Corps Primary, Diplomatic Aide Petra Sundaram, Security Detail LT, Commander Dissa Akafer SGT, Tomasz Vrana CPL, Maris Falwell. Ambassador Corps was processed through diplomatic identification in approximately 4 minutes. No flags. He was observed to be polite with processing staff, made a small comment to the intake officer about the station's new atrium section that caused the officer to laugh. He was assigned quarters in the diplomatic wing, Corridor 4, Suites 4A through 4C. His suite was noted as Varanthos standard. He thanked the housing coordinator. Cathara Syndicate Observer Delegation arrived separately at Bay 14. 6 individuals total. Their processing took longer due to initial resistance to standard documentation requirements, resolved after 40 minutes. Cathara delegation was observed by multiple staff members during station orientation. They were described uniformly as striking and unsettling. They average approximately 2.3 meters in height, bipedal, with secondary arm structures folded against their torsos when inactive, and bioluminescent markings along their cranial ridges that shift color with emotional state. Several station staff noted that when the Cathara looked at them, it felt like being looked through rather than at. The Cathara lead observer, identified as Primus Assessor Zekavan, was reported to have looked at the human ambassador's arrival party from across the atrium, said something to his delegation, and then laughed. The laugh was described by 3 separate witnesses as unpleasant. Ambassador Kaur either did not notice or did not react. He was talking to his aide about breakfast options at the time. Eyewitness account 2. I want to start by saying this was my first off-world assignment, and I need you to understand I was trying really hard to be professional and calm, and not obviously overwhelmed by every single thing. I was not always successful. Varanthos Station is its something. The main atrium is 6 stories tall with transparent panels on the ceiling, and you can see actual space up there, actual stars, and there are species from at least 9 different homeworlds moving around on the floor below, and the sounds and the smells are just completely unlike anything I had prepared myself for. We came through customs, and I was very focused on looking like I'd done this a million times. Sergeant Vrana, I noticed, was doing the same thing. Even Lieutenant Commander Akafor, who actually had done this multiple times, was doing that thing she does where she goes very still and very alert. Ambassador Kaur looked around the atrium the way you look around a coffee shop when you're deciding where to sit. That's the only way I can describe it. Completely comfortable. Completely at home. He saw the 6-story atrium full of aliens and he just went, "Good transit connections here, Petra. The Suvari suite is on level 3. We should stop in before the afternoon briefing." I found out later he'd been to Varanthos 4 times before. I found out much later what some of those prior visits had involved. That is not in my lane to discuss. The Cathara, I saw them across the atrium when we first arrived. I don't want to be dramatic about this, but they looked at our group the way I've seen certain large predators look at smaller animals at the zoo. Not hungry, not planning anything, just absent regard. You weren't worth the calculation. And they laughed. I looked at Ambassador Kaur. He was saying something to Petra about the new atrium section. He had his hands in his suit pockets, and he looked relaxed. But there was something about his posture, something subtle, something I didn't have the vocabulary for yet. I have the vocabulary for it now. He'd already noticed them, he'd noticed the laugh, and he'd filed it away somewhere. I didn't know it at the time, but the week was already beginning. From the personal journal of Ambassador Elias Kaur. Cathara delegation is larger than the intelligence suggested. 6 observers, not 4. The 2 additional members appear to be a different class, less diplomatic attaché, more something else. Muscle, escort, hard to tell with species I haven't read in person before. The Primus Assessor, Zekavan, made a point of being seen laughing when they spotted our arrival party. Textbook provocation. Classic, we are assessing your reaction to disrespect move. I've seen it from 3 other species, including the Horath in my first year. The only variable is what they consider a satisfying response. If I'd reacted, stopped, looked over, shown any kind of response, that would have told them something. If I'd visibly ignored them with effort, that would also have told them something. The best move was to actually be engaged in something else. Fortunately, I genuinely wanted to know about breakfast. Sardic fish is apparently available in the dining hall. I haven't had sardic fish since the Mendelian State dinner in 2378. I'm going to go find some. Then I'm going to read the full briefing on the Cathara assessment process, because I have a feeling this week is going to get interesting before it gets productive. The grain corridor matters. The children on Ceres and Kepler-7 matter. Everything else is noise. I should remember to call Destab before the session tomorrow. She worries when I don't check in. Internal communication, Cathara Syndicate, observer delegation. Arrived at Varanthos. Station is as described: neutral ground, multi-species facility, managed by contracted operators who follow no one's particular rules. Good. The council session dynamics are largely as expected. The Velthari are posturing. The Esuvari are nervous. The Mendelian Republic representatives look like they haven't slept. I want to talk about the humans. I've read the dossiers. I went in expecting the fragile things to look exactly as described. Soft, unimpressive, moved by facial expressions in ways that broadcast their internal states constantly, generally confused by complex political environments. The human ambassador Corps does not match the dossier. He is physically unremarkable. I want to be clear about that. By Cathara standards, or indeed by most species standards, he is a small, slow, poorly armored creature with no visible defensive adaptations. His security detail is similarly unimpressive. Standard sidearms, light armor beneath their clothing, nothing that would register as a serious threat assessment. But when we laughed at their arrival, standard assessment protocol cataloged their shame response, he didn't respond. Not in any way I could read. He was speaking to his aide. He appeared genuinely engaged. And then he looked up. Just once, just for a moment. It lasted perhaps 2 of your heartbeats. I have done this job for 40 years. I have looked into the eyes of species from 31 homeworlds. Most eyes tell you things. They show you calculation or fear or aggression or submission. Kor's eyes were completely flat. Not empty, not dull, just closed off. There was nothing showing because he had made a choice to show nothing. The mechanism was deliberate and complete. I would like more information on this species' background, not the standard dossier, the other files. Combat history, what they were before they developed space travel, what shaped the psychology foundation beneath the diplomatic surface. I have a feeling I am missing something important. Please advise. Zekavan. Session opened. Parties seated. Station translation systems activated. Archon Delegate VEYSSATH Velthari. This council recognizes the convening of Varanthos Summit Session 7. Standard protocols apply. Observer parties are reminded of their non-voting status. We will begin with position restatements from primary parties. Ambassador Corps, as the initiating party to this session, you are recognized. Ambassador KORR, thank you, Archon Delegate. I'll keep the restatement brief because I think we all know the terrain by now. Transcript notes, pause of approximately 4 seconds. The Varanthos corridor is the primary transit route for 11 Terran colony systems and their associated supply chains. For 11 months, Velthari Dominion vessels have physically blocked transit through that corridor, citing territorial claims based on the Velthari Sacred Mapping Act of 2203. During those 11 months, food shipment disruptions have affected approximately 2.3 million Terran colonial residents. Of those, the most significantly impacted are agricultural settlements that lack local food redundancy, specifically Ceres Colony and Kepler-7, where current nutritional supplement shortages have affected children under the age of 12. I am not here to relitigate the Sacred Mapping Act. I'm here to discuss whether it was ever intended to function as a tool for creating food insecurity in a neighboring species' civilian population. And I genuinely believe that it was not. I believe the Velthari Dominion is a civilization with a long and serious ethical tradition, and I don't think that tradition would endorse children going hungry over a corridor dispute. So I'd like to talk about solutions rather than positions. I'd like to talk about what a shared administration of the corridor might look like. I'd like to talk about what we can build rather than what we're arguing about. That's my position. I'm ready to listen. Archon Delegate Veysath. After a pause, the Velthari Dominion appreciates the ambassador's characterization of our ethical tradition. Transcript notes. The observer Primus Assessor Zekavan, who had been speaking quietly to his delegation, went silent at this point and appeared to be watching Ambassador Kor with closer attention than previously noted. From the personal journal of Ambassador Elias Kor. Session 1 went reasonably well. Veysath is a professional. She responded to the ethical framing the way I hoped. It gave her something to work with that wasn't a direct confrontation with Velthari territorial identity. I'll build on that tomorrow. The Kethara observer, Zekavan, watched me very carefully through most of the session. He wasn't as disengaged as I'd expected from an observer. He was studying something. I don't know what yet. Diplomat flagged 2 of the Kethara non-observer contingent as potentially armed above the sidearm limit. She's been watching them in corridor interactions. We can't confirm without a scan, and requesting a scan would escalate things unnecessarily. Noted for monitoring. The more I observe Zekavan, the more I think he's doing exactly what his communication to his syndicate probably described: assessment. The Kethara apparently categorize new species through a kind of graduated provocation process. They poke at you until they find out where your edges are. Then they decide if you're worth treating as a peer, a resource, or a nuisance. I think tomorrow they're going to do something. I don't know what yet, but the watching is preparatory. They're building up to a test. I've been through this before with other species. The Horath did something similar in the 70s. The key thing is to stay ahead of whatever they're planning. Don't react to their frame. Make them react to yours. Also, Dissa is worried. She gets this particular quality of silence when she's worried, and it was very loud today. I should talk to her. Also, the Sardic fish was excellent. Small good things. Eyewitness account 3. My job is threat assessment. It's what I trained for, what I'm good at, and what I take seriously in a way that sometimes makes me difficult to be around. Ask anyone who's worked with me. I prioritize the threat landscape over the social landscape, and I make no apologies for it. On day 1 of the Varanthos Summit, I identified 8 separate concerns. By day 2, I had consolidated them into 3 primary threat vectors. By day 3, I knew something was coming. I didn't know the shape of it yet. But in this work, that feeling, that particular quality of tension in a room is something you learn to recognize. The Kethara secondary contingent, the 2 I flagged for possible above-limit arms, I watched them for 3 days. Their positioning during sessions, their corridor behavior, the way they oriented when Kor was present versus when he wasn't. On day 3, I pulled Kor aside during a break and told him directly, "Sir, I think the Kethara is planning a physical engagement. I want to request we invoke enhanced protocols and..." He listened to everything I said. He didn't dismiss me or reassure me. He just listened, and then he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Dissa, if they come for me, don't move first. Let me see what I'm dealing with." I told him that was exactly the kind of thing I was there to prevent. He said, "I know. That's why I'm telling you directly, trust me." I have known this man for 9 years. I have been his detail lead for 6 of those. I know what he was before the suits. I have read the service record, the parts that weren't classified and some of the parts that were, because my clearance covers them. I trusted him. I did not like it. But I trusted him. Timestamp: September 7, 2381, continuous record. Entry type: Security Incident Prelog. Compiled from Station camera systems, corridor sensor arrays, and 2 security officer reports. The following is a chronological reconstruction of events on September 7th, 2381, beginning at 1340 hours. 1340 hours. Summit Session 7 breaks for afternoon recess. Parties exit council chamber prime and disperse to corridor areas. 1342 hours. Ambassador Corps moves with his aide Sundaram and security detail toward the corridor 4 lifts. The route passes through the main atrium overlap junction, a wide, high-ceilinged space where multiple delegate corridors intersect. 1344 hours. The Kethara Observer Delegation, led by Primus Assessor Zekavan, is positioned in the atrium overlap junction. This positioning, directly in the path of the Terran delegation's route, appears deliberate. Station camera records show the Kethara delegation moved to this location approximately 7 minutes before the session break, suggesting advanced knowledge of Corps' standard post-session route. 1345 hours. Ambassador Corps' party enters the atrium overlap junction. Encounter with Kethara delegation begins. 1345, 30 hours. Primus Assessor Zekavan moves to position himself directly in the path of Ambassador Corps. Standard posturing behavior, blocking movement, is a Kethara assertion of dominance hierarchy. Camera audio captures the following exchange, translated in real time by station systems. Zekavan Warmthing stop. KORR stops. Pause Primus Assessor. Zekavan, we have been watching your people's performance in the session chamber, the council theater. You speak well for a fragile thing. The sounds you make are organized, almost like a real language. KORR, thank you. It's been a working language for about 100,000 years, so we've had some practice. Zekavan, bioluminescent ridge markings shift to what is later identified as amusement coloration. It speaks with what your kind considers wit. Interesting. I have a question for the Warmthing Diplomat. KORR, I'm listening. Zekavan, my people have reviewed your species history, your origin world, your biological specifications. It is our assessment that your kind is, how to put this gently, an error, a developmental anomaly. Something that happened in a backwater system that was not meant to progress this far. Do you understand what I am saying? KORR, I understand the words yes. Zekavan, good. Because my question is this, how does it feel to sit at a table with your betters and perform voice sounds about grain shipments, to be the least significant thing in every room you enter? Does the Warmthing feel small? Pause. Station camera records show Core is still for approximately 3 seconds. KORR, can I tell you something interesting? Zekavan, ridge markings shift to curiosity coloration speak. KORR, you said we're an error, a developmental anomaly, something that wasn't meant to progress this far. And you know what? You're not entirely wrong. We're a species that evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill us for 4 billion years. The atmosphere was wrong. The other life forms were mostly interested in eating us. The climate changed catastrophically multiple times and took most of the other large animals with it. We shouldn't be here. Biologically, statistically, cosmically, we shouldn't have made it past the Ice Age. Zekavan, and yet here you are, an error that survived. KORR, here we are. And here's the part I find interesting, Primus Assessor. When something shouldn't exist, when something makes it through things it wasn't supposed to survive, it doesn't come out soft. Do you understand? It doesn't come out fragile, it comes out durable. Pause 4 seconds. Station records show Zekavan's ridge markings shift to an unidentified coloration that station translation systems flag as uncertain conflicted. Zekavan, voice coloration shifts. This is not the conversation I expected to have with a fragile warm thing. KORR, I get that sometimes. From the personal journal of Ambassador Elias Kaur. The conversation in the atrium went better than expected. Zekovan wanted to shame me, wanted to see if I'd flinch or inflate or go carefully blank. I did none of those. I just told him the truth. We are in error. The universe didn't design us for survival. We just refused to accept that. It landed. I could see it land. His ridge markings went to a color I don't have language for, which usually means the other party is recalibrating. But Dissa came to my suite at 20:30, and her silence was louder than I've ever heard it. She told me the 2 secondary Cathara contingent members had been repositioning throughout the day in ways that suggested operational planning. Not observation. Planning. She said, "Sir, they're not here to watch you talk. They're here to demonstrate something to the other council members, to their own syndicate maybe, to the universe." I asked her what they wanted to demonstrate. She said that humans bleed like everything else. I sat with that for a while. Then I took off my jacket and did something I haven't done in a long time. I went through my old forms, movement patterns, the things that live in muscle and bone and don't care how many years of diplomacy you stack on top of them. My body remembered everything. I put my jacket back on, I checked the collar, made sure my pin was straight. Tomorrow is day 5. I think tomorrow is when it happens. I want you, whoever reads this someday, to understand something. I didn't go into that next day angry. I didn't go in afraid. I went in the way I always go in. Present, patient, ready. The suit isn't camouflage. The suit is the truth of what I became on top of everything I already was. Eyewitness account 4. The night before September 8th, I saw Elias doing something in his suite that I pretended not to notice. The door was open slightly and I was passing in the corridor, and I saw him in the center of the room without his jacket, moving through something. I don't know the technical name for what he was doing. But it was slow and then very fast. It was precise in a way that movements usually aren't. Like every element had been drilled 10,000 times until it happened automatically. He looked like a different person, not in a scary way, or actually, yes, in a scary way, but a specific kind of scary that I realize now is actually reassuring if you're on the right side of it. I kept walking. I made tea. I didn't sleep much. In the morning he was back in his suit, fresh pressed, collar perfect, pin straight. He said good morning to me like it was any day. I said good morning back. We went to the session. The following record is compiled from 17 separate camera feeds, 3 security officer reports, 2 medical reports, and 2 witness statements from non-Terran parties who filed voluntary accounts with station management. 900 hours. Summit Session 7, Day 5 begins. Parties seat normally. 9:02 hours. Primus Assessor Zekovan is noted by station observers to be more present than previous sessions. His attention appears focused on Ambassador Kaur rather than the session content. 10:34 hours. First anomaly. The 2 Cathara secondary contingent members, designated in station records as Cathara Unit A and Unit B for clarity, shift position within the observer section. They are now positioned in a configuration that places them approximately 2 meters from the Terran delegation section of the chamber. 10:35 hours. Lieutenant Commander Akafer is noted to shift position. She does not escalate to core. 11:12 hours. Archon Delegate Vaseth proposes a recess. Second anomaly, Primus Assessor Zekovan immediately stands and speaks, which is outside standard observer protocol. Zekovan, on record, translated, before the recess. I request the Council's indulgence for a moment of syndicate assessment. Standard categorization process. The Cathara Syndicate must formally evaluate new parties before they can be recognized as legitimate negotiating entities. We have not yet completed our assessment of the Terran delegation. Archon Delegate VEYSSATH. Observer parties do not have protocol rights to formal assessment during sessions. Zekavan, we are exercising syndicate primacy right. The relevant clause in our provisional observer agreement allows. Transcript note, 4 minutes of procedural dispute follow. The Suvari representative signals objection. The Mendelian Republic representative appears uncertain. 11:16 hours. Archon Delegate Vayseth, in a decision that station legal staff will later note as procedurally questionable, allows Zekavan to continue, apparently under the assumption that assessment refers to a formal verbal evaluation. 11:17 hours. Cathara Unit A and Unit B move from the observer section. 1117, 20 hours. Ambassador Corps stands. This is noted because the standard protocol for this kind of procedural moment is to remain seated. Corps stands before anything physically happens. He appears to have anticipated the movement. Zekavan translated. The physical assessment is standard syndicate protocol. If the Warmthing Diplomat is truly a recognized party, they will demonstrate physical legitimacy. Units proceed. 1117, 30 hours. Cathara Unit A moves toward Ambassador Corps with what station security assessment later characterizes as intent to physically restrain and subdue, likely to demonstrate Terran physical inferiority in front of council members. Cathara Unit A is 2.4 meters in height and approximately 180 kilograms. It has 4 functional limbs, and the secondary arm structures unfold during approach, increasing apparent threat profile. 1117, 35 hours. What follows is documented from 17 camera angles and takes approximately 11 seconds total. Cathara Unit A closes to within arm's reach of Ambassador Corps. Ambassador Corps does not retreat. He does not raise his hands in a defensive posture. He stands exactly as he was standing. Cathara Unit A extends its primary right arm toward Corps' shoulder. What later analysis suggests was intended as a grabbing motion, designed to lift and physically displace the ambassador in a manner calculated to appear humiliating. The arm does not reach its target. What happens next requires multiple camera angles to fully reconstruct, because it occurs faster than the standard processing time for biological observation. Corps' left hand moves. It intercepts the incoming arm below the joint, a specific point, anatomically precise, and redirects the force of the motion in a direction the arm was not designed to travel. This is not brute counterforce. This is mechanical redirection using the attacker's own momentum. Cathara Unit A's secondary arm structures, which were beginning to unfold and extend, presumably as backup engagement, encounter a problem. Corps has already moved. He is no longer where he was. He is slightly to the left and behind the angle of Unit A's reach. This happens in approximately 1.8 seconds. Cathara Unit B moves from the secondary position. It is faster than Unit A and appears to be approaching from Corps' blind side. LT, Commander Akafer has her hand on her weapon but has not drawn. She is still. She is watching Corps. Corps turns. The turn is not reactive in the way that a startled or surprised person turns. It is preemptive. He is already facing Unit B's approach vector before Unit B has completed the approach. This suggests spatial awareness of a quality that multiple security analysts will later characterize as exceptional. What happens with Unit B is less reconstructible from camera feeds due to angle limitations. What is clear is, Unit B reaches Corps. There is a brief contact period of approximately 2.3 seconds. Unit B is on the chamber floor. Cathara Unit A, which had been off balance from the first redirection, has recovered partially and is now re-engaging. Corps is facing it. He is still in his suit. His tie is slightly displaced. Otherwise, he appears exactly as he did when he stood up 45 seconds ago. Cathara Unit A stops. Camera feeds from multiple angles record the same moment. Unit A stops, 1.7 meters from core. It stands there for approximately 4 seconds. Core's expression on camera is the same as it has been in every council session. Attentive, patient, giving nothing away. Unit A steps back. I wish to formally record my account as a witness to the events of September 8th. I have attended many council sessions. I have seen disputes. I have seen procedural confrontations and political maneuvering. I have never seen what I saw in Chamber C yesterday. The Cathara assessment, what they called it, was a clear act of physical intimidation intended to be witnessed by all council members. The message was clear. If the humans could not withstand this, they had no business at our table. I was prepared to feel concern for Ambassador Core. He is, to the eye, a small, unremarkable creature. His species' reputation within council circles prior to this incident was essentially intelligent negotiators, earnest, limited by biology, fragile. What I watched instead was something I do not have proper language for in standard trade dialect. The first of the Cathara units is a trained enforcer. I have seen Cathara enforcers in operation before. They are not subtle. They rely on mass and reach, and the comprehensive physical advantage they hold over most species they encounter. It touched Ambassador Core. I want to be precise about this. It extended its limb toward him. And then things became very strange very quickly. He did not fight in the way I have seen fighting done. There was no exchange. There was no back and forth of the kind that combat between two parties usually involves. He moved, and then the situation was different and the Cathara enforcer was somewhere else. The second one was faster, and I missed the mechanics entirely. It was on the floor in the time it took me to blink. The most striking thing, and I have thought about this for many hours since, was his face. I was watching his face the entire time. I needed to see something there. Anger, or fear, or exertion, or the kind of fierce expression that beings get when their survival is at stake. Something to tell me what I was watching. There was nothing. He looked like a diplomat attending a routine session. He straightened his tie afterward, just once, just the one small adjustment. I have spoken to my colleagues. Several of them had the same instinct I had in that moment. We were looking at something old, something that had been there much longer than the suit and the diplomatic credentials and the careful language. Something that had been shaped by a planet and a history that we clearly did not know as well as we thought we did. I am submitting this account because I believe the record should be accurate. I ordered the assessment. I take full responsibility for that decision. I made a calculation based on available data about human physical capacity, and I was wrong. I want to understand why I was wrong before I make another error of this type. Human beings, by every biological metric available to us, should not have performed the way the ambassador performed. Bone density, insufficient for the forces involved. Muscle mass, insufficient by Cathara standards. Reaction time, no standard species database had flagged it as exceptional. My units are trained. They are experienced. They have conducted physical assessments of 12 species over the past 6 years and have not encountered resistance of any note. Ambassador Core did not resist in the way a large, strong creature resists. He did not overpower my units through mass or strength. He moved like something that had been optimized over a very long time for a very specific environment. One in which brute physical advantage was something it often did not have, and therefore could not rely on, and therefore had to compensate for through other means. I have since obtained additional data on human evolutionary history, human training systems, human military records. I have read about what they call martial arts. The translation is approximately the way of prepared combat. though other translations are also used. Systems that are, in some cases, thousands of years old. Systems designed specifically for a smaller, weaker being to defeat a larger, stronger one by using precision, timing, and mechanical advantage rather than force. I had looked at the Terran ambassador and seen a small soft creature in decorative coverings. I had not asked, what does a species that spent 4 billion years being prey actually learn about survival? I am asking now. I should have asked before. To Ambassador Kor, if this record reaches him, I acted in a manner that dishonored the processes of legitimate negotiation. There is no argument I can offer that changes that. I offer instead the only thing I have, an accurate account of what I observed. You are not what your dossier said you were. I suspect your entire species is not what any of our dossiers say you are. I intend to correct this. Zekavan, Primus Assessor, Cathara Syndicate. I've been sitting here for a while, just sitting. I'm not injured. Desat checked me over immediately after we cleared the chamber. A small bruise forming on my left forearm where I took a glancing secondary contact from Unit B's approach. That's all. My tie was crooked, I straightened it. The Council is in emergency session right now. The Cathara delegation has been temporarily suspended from observer activities pending a procedural review. Archon Delegate Vaseth filed a formal protest regarding the misuse of observer rights. The Suvari representative submitted a statement. Disse wants to talk about what happened, I can tell. She has that look she gets where she's processing something and needs to either talk about it or run it out. And there aren't a lot of good running routes on a space station. I told her the same thing I always tell her, give me an hour. So I'm sitting here with this journal, and I'm trying to write down what it felt like. For the record, for Yusuf or whoever ends up going through these files someday. Here's what it felt like. It felt like a very old switch being flipped. Not a frightening switch, not a dramatic one. Just something quiet that lives in the basement of everything I am, that I built a life on top of, that I layered years of careful professional practice over, and that was still there when I needed it. My body knew what to do before my mind finished processing the situation. That's the only way I can describe it. The training doesn't go away. It doesn't atrophy with time. It just waits. I don't feel proud exactly. Pride is the wrong word. I feel something more like continuity. Like I understood something today that I always knew but rarely get to acknowledge out loud. I am what the Terran Defense Force made me. I am what 8 years of ground operations taught me. And I am also what 12 years of careful, grinding, patient diplomacy taught me. Those things aren't opposites. They're layers. They're the same commitment in 2 different forms. What I did today, I want to be precise about this, was not a demonstration. I was not trying to prove something. I was not performing for the Council, or for the Cathara, or for history. A creature with 4 arms and 200 kilos of biological hardware tried to grab me. I moved. That's all. But I think what they saw, what rattled Zekavan, what I could see rattling him even while it was happening, was the absence of what they expected. They expected either fear or aggression. They had a whole internal framework ready for one or the other. They got neither. You can't categorize something you don't have a frame for. Tomorrow I go back in. Session resumes. We still have a grain corridor to open. There are still children on Kepler 7 who haven't had decent nutrition in 3 months, and that is still the most important thing in any room I enter. I'll press my suit tonight, check my collar. Make sure the pin is straight. Then I'll sleep. You think it would be hard to sleep after something like that, but the switch flips back. It always does. The Diplomat is still here, just as present, just as ready. Just as much the truth of what I am. Sleep soon. Session Record Varanthos Summit Day 6. September 9, 2381. Session resumed at 900 hours. All primary parties present. Cathara observer delegation replaced by 2 junior observers pending procedural review of Primus Assessor Zekovan's conduct. Ambassador Corps arrived at 8:58 hours. Pressed suit, clean collar, pinned straight. He said good morning to the Suvari representative, who had been one of the first to file a voluntary witness statement the night before. She responded, and this was noted by 3 separate observers as unusual, in what is described as a different register than she had used with any Terran diplomat before. Something closer, they said. Something more careful, in a way that felt like respect rather than caution. Session content: Grain Corridor Transit Rights. By 14:30 hours on September 9th, the Velthari Dominion had agreed in principle to a joint administration framework for the Varanthos Corridor, a shared oversight model that would allow Terran agricultural vessels to transit while preserving Velthari's ceremonial designation of the corridor's midpoint. Ambassador Corps had proposed this framework during Session 7, Day 2. It took 5 more days to arrive, but it arrived. The Ceres colony food shipment cleared the corridor 14 days later. Eyewitness Account 7 final. At the end of Day 6, after the agreement was signed and everything was done, we were at the bay waiting for the Meridian to come into dock position. The 4 of us, me and SGT, Vrana and LT, Commander Akafer and Ambassador Corps. Vrana was doing that thing he does where he acts casual but he's still very alert. Akafer had finally, visibly, relaxed, and watching Desa Akafer relax is like watching a bridge unclench. It happened slowly. Ambassador Corps was looking out the bay window at the stars, just looking. He had his jacket on, collar straight, hands in his pockets. The station light caught the gray at his temples. I don't know what possessed me to say it. Maybe it was the end of the mission. Maybe it was just that I'd been holding the question for 6 days. I said, "Sir, yesterday how did you?" He turned and looked at me, just the one look, patient. Waiting. How did you know they were going to move? You were standing before they did. He thought about it, actually thought about it the way he does. Then he said, people who intend to hurt someone think about it first. That thinking shows up before the action, in how they position themselves, in where their attention goes, in the quality of the stillness before they move. He paused. You learn to read it. It takes a while, but you learn. I said, but weren't you scared? He looked back out at the stars. He was quiet for maybe 10 seconds. Then, I was scared when I was 22 years old and standing in a trench on Ceres with 4 people I was responsible for and no cover and very bad odds. I was scared plenty of times after that. I learned what it felt like and I learned how to work inside of it. Another pause. By the time you're my age, Corporal, scared isn't the enemy. Scared is just information. I didn't have anything to say to that. The Meridian docked, we went home. I've been thinking about it ever since. The debrief was 4 hours. The medical clearance was 40 minutes. The paperwork was, apparently, ongoing and I stopped caring about it after the 2nd hour. Someone from the Corps Communications office asked if I wanted to make a statement about the Varanthos incident. Something for the public record. I said no. This journal is enough. I've been home for 3 days. Desta made dinner last night, something complicated with actual vegetables, which I haven't had in 2 weeks, and which tasted the way good things taste when you've been without them long enough to remember what you missed. I sat at the table in my own kitchen. The window faces west. You can see the Geneva Hills in the evening. The light does something specific at this time of year. I thought about Kepler 7. About the food shipments moving through the corridor now. About the numbers Petra sent me, 2.3 million affected residents, and that number going down, week by week, as supply lines normalize. I thought about Zekovan's voluntary statement, which I read this morning. He wants to correct his species' dossier on humanity. I appreciate the impulse, though I suspect the correct information will be as hard for them to process as the incorrect information was comfortable. We are strange as a species. I know we're strange. We built elaborate systems of patient, careful, reasoned negotiation on top of a 4 billion-year history of fighting everything and still being here. We put on suits and speak in measured sentences, and we mean every word of it. The diplomacy is real. The commitment to talking instead of fighting is genuine. But underneath the suit, underneath the careful sentences and the measured tone and the patient waiting, we are still what we always were. I don't know if that's a warning or a comfort. Maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe it's just the truth of being human, which I've never fully known what to do with except live it as honestly as I can. I'm going to do something this evening that I haven't done in a few weeks. I'm going to sit outside on the back terrace with something warm to drink. I'm going to look at the hills and not do any work at all. Then tomorrow I'm going back in. There's a new negotiation starting, something in the outer reach, something about mineral rights and territorial waters and a species I've never encountered before. New faces, new politics, new room to walk into. New suit, clean collar, pinned straight. The stars out my porthole always look the same. I think that's a good sign. I promised I would be honest with you at the beginning, and I want to keep that promise at the end. Elia's Corps served the Terran Diplomatic Corps for another 6 years after Varanthos, before accepting an advisory position with the New Geneva Institute for Interspecies Relations. He still consults on complex negotiations. I'm told he still presses his suits the night before. I'm told the pin is still always straight. The Varanthos corridor has been under joint administration since 2381. The grain shipments have not been interrupted again. Primus Assessor Zekovan returned to Cathara Syndicate headquarters following a formal censure. He spent the next 2 years personally overseeing what became known, internally, as the Human Recalibration Project, a comprehensive review of all Syndicate intelligence regarding Terran history, biology, culture, and capacity. He reportedly told his team, "We made an assumption. We assumed soft coverings meant a soft center. We will not make this class of error again." The Cathara Syndicate formally applied for full council membership in 2384. Their petition included, in what is believed to be unprecedented syndicate transparency, an acknowledgement of the Varanthos incident, and a formal statement of revised species assessment regarding humanity. The revised assessment read, in part, "We categorized the humans as fragile. We were correct about the surface. We had no information about the interior. We are correcting the record." Corporal Maris Falwell is now Lieutenant Falwell. She leads her own security detail. People who work with her describe the same particular quality of attentiveness, a stillness that watches everything and shows nothing. When asked about it, she says she learned it from someone. She says she tries to work the same way. She says, "Scared isn't the enemy, scared is just information." And Elia's Corps himself. What do I say about Elia's Corps? I said at the beginning that this isn't a story about politics. I meant it. It's a story about something that's harder to name, about what gets built into a species through long enough time and hard enough circumstances, about what you carry in your body when the words run out, about the thing that's still true when you strip away everything that's been layered on top. I'm an archivist. My job is to keep records, to maintain the accurate account of what happened. What happened at Varanthos Station, September 8, 2381 is this. A species that the universe had written off as too small, too soft, too late to matter, sat down at a table and spoke patiently and carefully about children going hungry. And when that same universe decided to test whether the words were all there was, it found out. It found out what's underneath the suit. And it has been taking that information seriously ever since. That is the accurate account. That is what we keep. Following the events of September 8th, TDC intelligence has noted the following behavioral shifts in Cathara syndicate diplomatic conduct. 1. The Cathara Physical Assessment Protocol, previously documented in interactions with 6 other species, has been suspended pending internal review. 2. Syndicate communications intercepted in the week following Varanthos reference the incident approximately 47 times across 11 separate transmissions, which represents an unusual frequency of internal discussion. 3 junior Cathara diplomatic staff have filed what translates roughly as formal learning requests, requesting access to Terran historical archives, specifically pre-spaceflight military history, evolutionary biology, and what one request describes as their conflict preparation systems that appear to be of considerable antiquity. 4 Primus Assessor Zekovan's personal communications include one flagged entry, unencrypted, suggesting he either forgot or didn't care, in which he writes to a colleague, "We looked at what they wear and we decided we knew what they were. We should have asked what they had survived." One thing is missing from this archive that I want to flag before sealing the record. When Ambassador Kaur submitted his personal journal voluntarily, all 10 entries, no redactions, the processing officer at TDC asked him if there was anything he wanted to add for the formal file. He thought about it. He said, "Tell them it wasn't impressive. Tell them it was necessary. There's a difference." The officer asked him what the difference was. He said, "Impressive would mean I wanted them to see it. Necessary means I would have preferred they understood enough not to make me." That's the last entry. That's where the record ends.